Greetings, 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 everyone. It's Steve, Paracords of Kindness. How you doing today? Hopefully your weaving's been happy. Okay, what I have for you today is I'm going to show you how I set up I don't know this is what I call it. I call it a 4-strand core with an offset working end. Okay? If you don't understand that, and I'm sure somebody out there has done a tutorial on this, and they perhaps may even call this something else. I don't know. But that's what I call it. A 4-strand core with an offset working end. Now, you can have a 6-strand core with an offset working end. I assume as far as I know, I don't think I've ever seen, I'm sure there's out there though, a 2-strand core with an offset working end. Okay, what I mean by an offset working end is this. Normally, when you do a core strand setup, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, doesn't matter. What you end up doing is, most of the time, the way I see most people explain this and teach this, and the way I've seen most people do it, and the way I do it, is you find the halfway point of your cord and you hitch it, whether it be the top or the bottom, and then you commence to, weaving it between your two buckles, and you end up with your two working ends, all the excess of the cord coming off on either side at the top. And, since you started at the halfway point, you have equal lengths. And most bracelets are made that way. And you begin your weave. This cord goes over and weaves, and this cord goes over and weaves. And sometimes the cords kind of cross. It just depends. But the whole point is that you have two working ends of equal length coming off, one on either side, right? And when I say an offset working end, means all the slack goes to one side and you have one long working end. The other side, there is none. Makes sense? So basically, you do the bracelet and it only has one working end that gets woven back and forth down through there. There's a few bracelets like this. The one I've done most recently is the Sonic Armor Modified. Let's see if you can see that. Now, the basic bracelet is black. Now, for those who watch my channel, I will come back and sit down and take my time with a piece of scrap microcord and go, how can I stitch that? Well, that's the pattern I come up with for this one. I'm sure you can do all kind of ways. But the basic bracelet is the black. And this one is done on a 4-strand core with an offset working end. Okay, now, how do you set that up? I've seen this done another way on a video. And I sat there and watched it. And I'm like, okay, I see how you did that. I said, but in my mind, all he did was, instead of starting at the halfway point and hitching it, he guesstimated the distance between this buckle and this buckle, and and how many times he would have to go back between the two, and he used, kind of that much, and then he hitched it. You see what I'm saying? So basically, he had more on one side than the other. And I was like, well, yeah, you could do that. I said, but in order to, how do I say this? In order to help facilitate learning how to do this and getting intimate with these core setups, because for those who watched my videos, I tell you, that's one of the first things you should learn is core setups. I know in the beginning, I would see a bracelet and it would be a 4-strand core, and I was like, oh, because that was so intimidating to me. Just the way they would do it. And adjusting it, trying to get it all measured and all that correctly. And it was intimidating. But I finally said, you know what, just sit down and learn how to do this. And I sat down and just over and over and over, and I did it, and, Now, I'm not going to say I don't make mistakes. Every now and then I'll get my over and under wrong, but, for the most part, I've got it. But doing this the way I'm going to show you, it gets you a little bit more intimate with the setup. Does that make sense? Okay, now I know I've talked long enough. I'll show you how to do this. It's not really that hard. It's basically what you're doing. Instead of doing hitching from the center and working your way out, you're starting on one end and working your way all the way across. So you have to know how to do these hitches from one side to the other. Does that make sense? And that was always confusing to me. And I'll be honest, I have to stop and think about it to make sure I'm going to do this right. Okay? But this is the way I do this, and I'll show you what I do. Obviously, I'll say this up front. Obviously, I'll already have my jig measured out roughly to about the size I want it. That way, when I actually get all the strands on there woven, I don't have a bunch of adjustment. You see what I'm saying? I leave a little slack in it, obviously, because you're going to have to tighten it up, but I'll have it kind of measured. Now, for the sake of this is not measured or anything. I'm going to just show you the overs and the unders and all that, you know what I'm saying? But let's get into this. Okay, I'm going to turn this sideways, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Hopefully, this will help you see just a little bit better. And this thing's not wanting to focus. Like I say, I'm not a filmmaker, don't have the best equipment. Things don't want to stay focused. I can't seem to stay in frame. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you why I'm going to do it the way I do it. First off, you take your end, and just so we know, I'm going to start on this side, and I'm going to weave it and work my way across, and I'm going to have that offset working end be over here on this side. Okay? So what I'll do is I'll take the end of my cord, starting at the top of the buckle on the far right side. We're going to go down through the slot. Down through the slot. Okay, now I'm going to leave enough, and I'll explain to you why I'm going to do this. I see some people who will do this little knot. If you always hear me in my videos talk about the two knots at the top. That's all it is you go up, you come back over the top, and you go back through. We say that, and I just kind of pull it. Now, normally on a normal thing, you got a whole bunch of slack over here, and it's a working end, right? But for this, you don't need that. But I am going to leave me enough slack. That way, in the end, after I'm done weaving the entire bracelet and all that, I can come back. Because you know me, if you watched my videos, I'll tell you, I'm not going to cut and burn it right there. I do not want that burn mark to be seen. I want all of them on the back side of the bracelet. So I'll leave enough slack that I can get my fid on here and fold it back over itself. The relation of the distance or the length of this cord in relation to the length of the fid. You see what I'm saying? That way you can get the tip of the fid back through the back side of the bracelet on some wraparound, some knot or whatever, and you can back weave it into there. Then you can cut and burn it, right? So basically what I'm getting at is I need a little bit more slack in that white, right? Which is no problem. Depending on the length of your fids, this amount you have hanging over. Okay, now you see how there's a little bit of slack between the tip of that fid and this knot. That's what you want. You want a little bit of slack. Like I said, it just all depends. The length of the cord is going to depend on the length of your fid you have. Now, there's ways to get around doing it that way, but that will just make it easy for the beginners who've never done this. Whatever, that's the way I would do it. Just leave you a little bit of slack. That's all there is to it. Okay, now this knot right here, you can go ahead and pull it as tight as you want. Get your fid off. That's just for a reference. Now, here's where the actual doing of the cord comes in. Okay? This is all you do. Hopefully I can keep this on camera. You find the end of your cord. Oop, I got a big old knotted mess going on right here. Let's fix that. Okay. You find the end of your cord. And what you're going to do, let me make sure I'm going to tell you this correctly. You're going to go to the bottom buckle on the right side. Like I said, we're starting on the right, and we're going to work our way across the buckle. So you're going to go down through the slot, and you're going to pull your slack through. correct? Okay, now we're going to come over the top, you go down through the slot and the buckle, you come around, and you go over the top of the cord you just, the actual cord strand, correct? Now, we'll find the end of our cord. Now this time, we're going to come from the bottom up through the slot, right? And we'll pull our slack through. Now this loop that you have created, you take that end and you go through that loop. Pull your slack through. And what we have just done is we have created a cow hitch working from one side to the other, as opposed to simply cow hitching, the normal method. You see what I'm saying? And that's what confused me in the beginning. And I think that's what confuses a lot of people on how to actually do that. Okay, work from one end to the other as opposed to just running two ends through there and going through the loop. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do it again, but we're going to do it up here at the top. So, we're going to take this, find the end. You'll come to the top, go through the top of the slot, and we're going to pull our slack through. Okay, now on this one, what we're going to do is we're going to come up between these two cord strands. And we're going to cross over this way. Over this strand that we just ran up. We run it up, we go through the slot down, and then we come up right here between the two and we cross over. We understand that? Okay, now we find the end of our cord. And this time, we're going to come from the bottom up through that slot. And just like below here, down here, we're out of focus. Let's try to get this in focus. Just like down here when we created that loop and we went through it, that's what we're doing. Here's the loop. And I'm going to do this just so you can see. You can go ahead and put the strand through the loop, but I'm going to pull the slack out so you can see this. You see this loop forming, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the working end and we're going to go through this loop. And we're going to pull our slack through. Now normally, I'll say this, normally when I do, I mean everybody's got a different way to do this, but normally when I set up a 4-strand cord, this is the cow hitch I would start with. At the center point of the cord, I do this cow hitch and work my way out this way and out this way. But like I said, on this one, we're working from one side to the other, therefore all the excess or the slack will be on that side. Does that make sense? Okay, now we're going to do our cow hitch down here at the bottom. One more cow hitch. Find the end. Kind of push everything over. And again, we're going to come from the top and go down through that slot. Okay, and we're going to take our slack out. What we're going to do this time, see how you got a loop, and you got your hitch and 2 cord strands on this side. Now we're getting our 3rd cord strand. We're going to take that piece that we just ran down through there, and we're going to come up between. And we're going to go, again, we're going to go across the top of the strand we just did. All right? And again, what we're doing is we're forming this loop that we made, and this loop that we made, we're just forming another one. Going to find our working end, and we're going to go through the bottom of the slot and come up. And we'll pull our slack out, and you'll see this loop. See how this loop's starting to form? You can start to see the loop, actually. All right, now, we're going to, again, take our working end and go through that loop. And pull your slack out. Now, we can see. We see it now. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 cord strands, and then you have your 2 cow hitches. Right? Okay, now, we're going to do one more at the top. What we're going to do is one of these knots. We're going to take our cord, find the end, push everything over so you can make room, And we're going to come from the top down through that slot. If I can get it to go through there. It's kind of hard to see. I have the camera set up and it's kind of blocking my vision. So I apologize. Okay, did we see that? We ran up the core string, the final fourth core string, and we go through the top of the buckle, through the slot, and come out. Now, we're going to do the same knot. You always hear me talk about this in my videos. I say the two little knots at the top. This is the knot. You know, if you watch my how to set up the core strings, you've seen me do it. This is how I do it. Okay, same thing. We're going to take it. We're going to take out working in. And that core string on that far outside edge, we're going to go over the top of it. And this loop that's formed right here with all this excess, we're just going to go back under that, over, and then back under, and we're going to pull all our slack out. You see what I'm saying? Now, obviously, I haven't tightened any of this up or whatever, but we see the basics. Like I said, you have this, and it's going to get ran, and after the bracelet's woven and all that, you're going to, this is the way I do it, I'll put a fit up on that and back weave it into some loop, knot, wrap around, whatever on the back, and then I can cut and burn that. Oh, it's not visible. But now you have all your excess. Now, granted, when you actually do this for a bracelet, you're going to have 10, 12, 15, 20 feet of cord, and you're having to feed it. It kind of can get a little, you know, because you got cord everywhere, and you're having to run it through and pull all 15 feet through. Put it there and run all 15 feet through. Makes sense? So, you know, be patient with it. But basically, now we have all our slack on one side, an offset working end. Makes sense? But that's how you do it. It's not that difficult to actually set it up and get the overs and the unders. The difficulty comes in when you start trying to size it. The reason I say that, it's not difficult. It's just, for me anyway, it's not that it's difficult. It's just not what I'm used to doing. Because most of the time when you go to tighten up this, like I said, I'll have the jig measured out roughly close, less than, remember that's key, less than what you actually want it to be. Wrist measurement with the add to measurement for thickness of the bracelet for the jig measurement. Make sense? And I'll have it just shy, just shorter than the jig measurement. And then I'll tighten everything up. And then I'll stretch it with my jig to get all these tight, okay? And normally, for me, the way I would do it is, you know, I would start on this cow hitch and then do these. And when I go to tighten everything up, I would tighten this one up first at the center and tighten outward. But this one, you can't do that. You have to start on one end and tighten this hitch, this. You see what I'm saying? You have to work your way across it. That way, you tighten it up and all your slack ends up on one end. Does that make sense? And it's a little, it's not the norm in most bracelets that are woven. So it can be kind of strange. But the way I do it, like I said, I already have it measured out roughly. Now that I've got everything set up, I'll come over here and I'll grab this loop that's coming out the back where it comes down. This strand, core string that's on this far side, come down and it goes through, and you grab this side of the loop from the bottom and you can kind of pull it. You see how when I pull right there, it tightens this up. See how it tightens up that one core string? And you can come over here and get a better measurement. Now, like I said, if, say, we're making the jig measurement, not the wrist, the jig measurement would be the wrist plus the add to. Due to thickness, the jig measurement is what you actually measure on your jig. Right? So, the way I do this is I'll get this from connection point, for those who don't know, from connection point between the male and the female end, the connection point. Measure from there to the connection point down here between the female and the male end. The two connection points between, that's what you're measuring. Okay? And like I've said, all these marks down here, these are not for measuring. That's not what they are for. You use an independent measuring device to measure between that connection point and the connection point below. That gives you a true measurement. That way you have less mistakes. Right? But I'll get this and I pull it tight, and then I'll take another measurement to make sure that it's about where I want it. And like I said, I'll have it like if I want it to be, let's just say, I want a 7.5 inch jig measurement. What I will do is the way I do this, now not everybody's going to do it this way, but this is the way I do it. And my jig's built and I can do this. 7.5 inch jig measurement, what I'll do is I'll actually measure this out at 7.25 inches. So it's a 1/4 inch shy right in there, right? And I'll get that set up. And when I know that the jig measurement I have is a 1/4 inch shy of what I want, then I'll start tightening it up. Like I said, you can pull this. Now be mindful. I'll show you this too. This is something that I've seen come into play. Here's your tip, trick, or whatever. Sometimes when you pull these, the way my jig is, not everybody's jig will do this or whatever. It just depends on the mechanics and how this thing's connected. Sometimes what will happen is that buckle will get pulled to one side, and it'll cause it to twist. And it'll cause this side of that connection point to be closer. And then this one down here on the bottom, it'll get pushed the same way. So you have the two connection points on this side of the buckle are closer than they are. You see how they're both, this buckle's angled this way, and this buckle up here is angled this way. So what I'm getting at is the measurement from this side to this side is going to be longer than the measure from this side to this side. Makes sense? So when you measure all this, make sure your buckles are straight. Try to keep them straight. You know, when you pull this and you get it where you want it, what I'll do is I'll come back on this one hitch, pull this, and sit down there and put my finger on that bottom and kind of hold that tension in that cord strand. I know there's a lot of cords over here and it's confusing. Let's get all that out of the way. But pull this one and it tightens this up. It runs down, it goes through, and this is where it comes out. Pull that. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be really tight, just, tight. And you hold it down here with your finger to keep the tension. Okay, then you go to the next cord strand, which is the one in that hitch. It's the same one in that hitch, right? And all you do is you grab this and you just kind of, you see what I'm saying? You tighten that up. Now that this is tight, this will stay here. And we just work our way up to the next one. We see that? And on this one, we grab this side of the hitch. Now watch. I'm going to do it from the bottom because I can get a hold of it better. But watch. When I pull down here, it's going to tighten this cord up. We see that? And I just reach back there with my finger. And I just hold it. Right? Get it tight and hold it back there with my finger. And then we go to the next cord strand. And I'm going to pull this and it's going to tighten up that loop. See how it's doing? You want to make sure there's no twist. Always be mindful of your twist. I say that 1,000 times in all my videos. Mindful of your twist. Mindful of your twist. We don't want any twists in our cord. Right? So we pull that, make sure it's tight, and then we pull this one. Right? You can take it and kind of work it up with your thumb a little bit. Right? But you don't want to get I don't want to get all this super tight right now. Why? Because when I go to actually try to get that 1/4 inch out of the jig measurement that I need, it's going to take all that slack out of all them little knots. Does that make sense? Okay, now we're going to do the same thing. Like I said, working from one end to the other. We're going to just follow that cord strand down. From where we just tightened that hitch up, we're going to follow this down to the bottom. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to grab this side of that loop because it goes down through there and it goes out and it comes right here. So I'm going to reach under here and grab right there. Hopefully you can see where I'm grabbing. And I'm going to just pull all this slack. Just going to tighten this up. We see that? All right. I'm going to grab it with this hand right here and just kind of hold it. You know, not trying to break the metal buckles or anything. Just kind of give it a little snug. And I'll reach back here with my finger and I'll hold it. That way it maintains that little bit of tension. And we do the same thing. We just go to that next working or that next core string. We see this is what we just pulled tight. And it goes around and it comes up to the last core strand. And we just grab that and all we're going to do is take out the slack of that loop. And it looks like there may be a twist in this, so we're going to see. Yep, there's a little bit of a twist. Let me see if I can't get that out. You see right here how that cord's doing right there? It's because it's wanting to start to twist on me. So I'm going to get that out. And all I did when I pull this up, I'm twisting it as I pull it. And it'll get that. Now, you got to know which way to twist it. That just comes with experience. You'll figure it out. It's not hard. You can either twist to the left or to the right. You start twisting and you notice that the twist in the cord gets more, you're twisting it the wrong way. So you go back and do it again. And normally you take your slack back out. You see what I'm saying? Pull it back through and then twist it the other direction as you pull it. But you see how I'm doing that, okay? So just pull this. So you do it up here. That's the easiest way to do it. Just grab it right here and kind of pull upwards like this. Because the nature of the way this thing's wrapped through the bucket, it makes it a little easier. You just pull it up. When you get up there, you just kind of work it around like that. It takes out the majority of the slack. Now up here at the top, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to follow that cord up. It goes through and it comes out the bottom. And we're going to just see, now we've got four string core. And this little knot that I had going on, right? Again, we're just going to pull this, hold my finger on the bottom, and grab that working end. You see how it tightens it up? And when you get it up there to the top, you can use your thumb, push it up to the top, and you can take your thumb and kind of roll the excess around as you're pulling this cord that direction. Make sense? That's how you set it up. Then I would come back at this point. I would measure my connection again to make sure it's where I want it. Like I said, we were going for a 7.5 inch jig measurement. And I would have set this right here up, this measurement right here at 7.25 inches. Then, once I get it all set up, I measure it, make sure it's 7.25 inches. That's when I will come down here and loosen this piece up and pull it. And it will tighten all this up, and I will get that 1/4 inch out of it. Make sense? And then I will tighten this part up, and all my core strings will be tight. It'll take out, for the most part, it'll take out all the looseness in these little hitches and everything like that, and you'll have a tight. It won't be like this, flopping. It'll be tight. It'll be bing, 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 like you're plucking a guitar string. But what you end up with is now, like I said, this one's not going to be used in the weave. It's simply, after the bracelet's made, it's going to be tucked under the backside and cut and burned to hide it. But now, you have all your slack from this cord, and I don't even know how long this cord was, about 5 or 6 feet. It's just one I use as a teaching aid. But you have all your slack or your excess is on one side. And this is what you would weave the bracelet with. Makes sense? Hence why I call it a 4-strand core with an offset working end, as opposed to your normal 2 working ends. It's only got 1 because all the cord is offset to that side. Makes sense? That's how you do it. It's not that hard, but like I say, I've seen people do this other ways, and I thought about this. How would I want to show somebody how to do this? And this is the way I did it. Why? It's because in doing this, you learn how to do these hitches from one direction to the other. Because I know most of the time what people will do, I'll just show you. They'll take and they'll run it through that buckle, and then they'll come back and they'll stick it through that loop, and they'll pull it through, and then they'll tighten it up. And they'll have that cow hitch. And that's easy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. But there are instances where you have to do it from one end to the other. And this is a perfect example. And in sitting and learning how to do this and practicing it, you will learn how to do these hitches from one side to the other, as opposed to doing it, running it both through and feeding both ends through the... But you see what I'm saying here. Do it like this. Normally, I've seen it. They can do it you can do it one of two ways. You can take your two ends, run it through the slot in the buckle, run it through the slot, and then come back and grab those two ends and pull them, and you have a cow hitch. We can see that, right? Or I've seen people do it. They'll find the center point and they'll stick that through the slot. All right? And they'll pull their ends through. There's actually another way to do it. Let me find one of these buckles. I'll get one of these bigger ones and I'll show you what I'm talking about. You can do it this way. Let's find this bonus material right here. Find a halfway point. All right? Like for this, what you can do is you can take your buckle, right? Whichever side, it doesn't matter. Me personally, normally when I do a four-strand core, I start up at the top and I hitch to the male end. Well, what you can do is this. Here's a trick. So you got it attached to your jig. Your jig's holding it right here. What you can do is you can take that and run it down through there. Right? From the top, running it down, just a simple loop through there. And this will save you from having to run, 12, 15 feet of cord through that loop. What you do is you just reach up through and you take that buckle off and you push it back over itself. And you just pull it tight. And then once you do that, you pop it back into that buckle. The female side is attached to your jig. Makes sense? Hey, somebody asked me that. They said, you mean there's more than one way to do this? Yes, there's more than one way to do this. And as you do it and you learn all the different ways to do it, it just comes with experience. You're sitting there looking at it going, well, I need to do it this way. My end results need to be this. You know what? It'll be easier for me to do it this way and work across or do this or what. Does that make sense? Just with experience, you figure out which way is the most effective way for what your results are, what you want your results, how you want it set up and all that kind of stuff. But get intimate with all these different ways. Makes sense? But like I say, that right there, that was bonus material for you. You know me, I like to talk, I like to teach, I like to overly explain. People say, no, he thoroughly explains things. You're going to know how to do this when you're done. Now, I just say, practice this, learn this. And, but that's how you do it. It's a 4-strand core with an offset working in. But with that, I'll end this one like I end them all. Keep it neat, keep it clean, and keep it tight. Happy weaving, folks.